of us are fortunate enough to have a close relationship with the nature that surrounds us. But what about everyone else? Can we find ways to make people feel like old friends with the environment that surrounds them? Because communing with nature, the plants and animals in it, is important for our collective well being. Hello and welcome to Eco India. I'm Sanuta Raghu. Today we'll introduce you to some people who are taking care of nature in all its forms. Stray animals are not a rare sight across India. My own neighborhood takes care of 6 dogs and 4 cats, for example. But many a time, these animals, including cows, horses, and goats who live on the streets, are unable to fend for themselves. We met an animal rights champion in Delhi who takes care and nurses these animals in distress back to health.
Bulbul is still severely traumatized. When she arrived at this animal sanctuary in Silakhari, she was 3 months old, in pain and blind. Her eyes had been gouged out, an act of revenge among competing groups that rent horses for traditional celebrations.
I realized that we had to change the way she associated, what she associated with human beings. We had to change it in her head. So then everyone who came to visit or any volunteer who was here, every day someone would read to her. Those who could sing, I would ask them to sing. After about 4 or 5 months, she started coming outside. And then after 6 months, she allowed us to touch her, she allowed anyone to go in, and then we allowed her out.
Bulbul is only one of 800 odd animals and birds that Anjali Gopalan cares for. In this quaint village, around an hour from Delhi, the activist runs All Creatures Great and Small, a sanctuary for animals in distress. Anjali Gopalan is a well-known figure in India. She is particularly renowned for her pioneering work in HIV/AIDS and LGBT rights. Building an animal rescue shelter wasn't part of her plan, but after volunteering at a sanctuary with limited capacity, she set up her shelter in 2012. A sanctuary that was meant to take care of 55 dogs originally is today teeming with creatures, great and small.
The animals who've come to us are either accident cases. We had closed down illegal circus. So some of the dogs and the horses came from there. So of course some horses were abandoned and we got them full of wounds and things like that.
Some of the worst exploitation of horses in India takes place at weddings. Traditionally, the groom rides on a horse to the ceremony, accompanied by a crowd making a lot of noise and often firing celebratory gunshot. Gopalan is planning a campaign against this culturally ingrained practice. The 63-year-old is supported by her team of 21 helpers. Most of them are volunteers. There is a vet in charge of a clinic that's been receiving a lot of outpatients recently.
Being a veterinary surgeon, my work here is not just limited to treatment. I just have to take care of the nutrition as well. The dogs which are in the shelter, they are getting ample amount of food, the right amount of food actually. Not only dogs, we have got cows, buffaloes, donkeys also. So that also I have to take care of. It amazes you all the time how resilient these animals are.
Out of the 800 odd animals here, close to 500 are dogs. India has the highest population of street dogs in the world, estimated at around 35 million. As part of an animal birth control program, dogs are supposed to be rounded up, sterilized, and then returned to where they were found. But Gopalan says it has been poorly implemented. The procedure is carried out at the shelter.
Unfortunately, the program has not been as successful as we would want, because when they're picked up, they're also vaccinated. But the fear is what? One is the fear of being bitten by dogs. The other is the fear of rabies, which is a very real thing in this country.
Laws to protect animals were established more than 60 years ago, and penalties have not been updated. For cruelty against animals, for instance, the fine is all of 50 rupees. That's less than 60 euro cents. It is meant that in states like Punjab, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh, underground dogfighting rings continue to flourish. Exotic birds and animals continue to be bred in captivity. In the case of emus, these birds that are not native to India were brought more than 20 years ago from Australia to promote emu farming as a partnership project between both governments, the trend that never really took off.
They convinced farmers that they would make a lot of money selling emu meat and emu eggs.
Okay.
So emu meat and emu eggs did not become popular. So all they did was that they let the emus out. So many obviously died. And the few that we've managed to get, they were injured with dog bites and all. So we found them at some toll somewhere and some highway somewhere, and that's how they've come to us.
Initially bootstrapped with her personal savings and an investment from her father, All Creatures Great and Small today primarily relies on donors for its funding. To keep up with its increasing needs, the farm is on its way to becoming self-sufficient. But Gopalan's first priority remains making sure that the animals get the care and attention she believes they deserve.
You know, when people tell me that they hate animals or they don't like dogs or they can't stand cats, you don't know what you're missing. Yeah. Forget about our relationship with our loved ones and our families and our friends. All of it is transactional. But this is one relationship between human beings and animals that is non-transactional.
A relationship that Gopalan and her volunteers do their best to nurture.
Like Anjali, there are many environmentalists around the world who are working to undo any harm caused to nature. Take man-made fires, for example. We've all seen the horrific images of these fires, be it in Uttarakhand in India or California in the US. In Germany, scientists are trying something different. They're experimenting to see what would happen if a forest ravaged by fire was left more or less to its own devices.
Whether beech trees, maples or aspens, Jeanette Blumroeder and Pierre Ibisch are always glad to see a new member of the family arrive. About 12 months ago, the two researchers began documenting changes, big and small, to this section of a forest ravaged by fire.
Das, was wir gewünscht, gehofft hatten, ist eingetreten.
We got what we hoped for. The ecosystem is starting to recover, and certain species are quickly appearing and spreading, such as these aspens. They've now brought about changes to the area that are in turn helpful for other species.
Veränderungen erbringen, die wiederum für andere Arten günstig sind.
In August 2018, a forest fire razed almost 4 square kilometers of woodland outside the town of Treuenbrietzen in eastern Germany, an area larger than 500 soccer pitches. The usual practice after a forest fire is to clear the entire area and replant trees, as seen on this private land. But not in this case, thanks to a government-funded project. Here, dead trees are left standing. Local forester Dietrich Henke is testing an alternative solution, removing most of the dead pine trees and planting other species in their place. The idea is to create a mixed forest that's also home to oaks, poplars and other deciduous trees.
Für mich war wichtig zu erkennen,
I first wanted to see which species of tree I could use and how old they need to be before being transplanted. Carrying out tests is important to get the full picture.
eben auch Versuche startet.
And that's where the forester brought in the expertise of these researchers. They're here to find out the best way for a forest to be able to regenerate and become more climate resistant, with or without human assistance. The researchers take a hands-off approach, limiting their work to observing which plants and animals settle in the habitat. It's a rare opportunity.
Weil dieses Paradigma
It's now standard procedure to see to it that we repair the damage that humans have done. All too frequently, we do not give nature the time or space to do that itself. And that deprives us of the chance to learn from nature.
Vergeben wir auch die Chance, davon zu lernen.
Among the things they have learned is that in addition to providing shade, deadwood also enhances the soil when it falls to the ground. It creates more humus, which gives the soil more moisture. The work Henke has carried out on his test areas is on a smaller scale than is common in conventional forest management. They're barely accessible by car, and he's erected a fence around the forest to keep larger animals at bay. He left a number of dead trees standing. Leaves have also been spread to keep the soil moist and protected during drought.
We're seeing large-scale forest fires in the region, and that's going to continue, so we need to learn how to respond.
And that's why researcher Jeanette Blumröder is here. She's been collecting data on soil humidity and temperature, which plants and animals settle there, and how all these factors impact on the ecosystem. 8 other research institutes are also involved in the project. The data gathered over the project's 5-year time frame is being collated at her university in Eberswalde near Berlin.
Our data shows that natural rejuvenation far exceeds the number of trees planted by humans. We've seen up to 3 times the amount of poplars naturally resettling compared to the pine or oak trees that were planted on the area.
The researchers are also part of an international network. They're eager to hear about the experiences of colleagues in the US and Mediterranean countries, and to learn if and how forest ecosystems can be made more robust.
Das ist tatsächlich ein wichtiger Ansatz.
Pooling our work is really important. It can help us to compare biomes or large ecological zones so that we can discuss common patterns.
Und sich dann auszutauschen.
One thing a number of studies show is that even the remains of trees killed or damaged in severe fires help the forest ecosystem rebound, which supports the argument of letting nature be.
How does being in nature or gardening help you? Does it calm you down? Does it make you more confident? Research shows that contact with nature can help boost our mood, and it can even help people who are suffering from depression and other mental health issues. A clinic in the city of Chennai has introduced green therapy as part of their patients' rehabilitation program.
Working in the garden is good for Sita. She suffers from schizophrenia and has asked not to be identified. She's been at this clinic for approximately 10 years. Before her illness, Sita worked in a textile business. Here in the garden, the banana plants are helping her feel better. She says we look after the garden every day. We bring water from the tap and water these plants. We take in the fresh air. When it rains, we don't need to water the plants. We also sit out here to eat. It's nice because of the air. It's a nice garden and a nice hospital. The clinic where Sita is being treated is the Institute of Mental Health in Chennai. It's one of the oldest psychiatric institutions in Asia. For more than 10 years, the doctors have practiced so-called ecotherapy or green therapy. The basis of these treatments were scientific studies that investigated the effect of gardening on patients' behavior and healing.
They've also found it increases the concentration, it increases their, improves their mood, and it makes them still more manageable. So in every literature has given only a positive effect on the patients and never a negative one. Drugs works wonders. Along with drugs, this aids in the speedy recovery.
The idea to make gardening a part of therapy came from elsewhere. In 2007, the non-governmental organization Niral planted a garden on the grounds of the huge facility. Experts supported the endeavor. Shobha Menon is the founder of Niral, which means shade. For her, it was also something new, the interplay between reforestation, caring for gardens, and the contribution of patients from the clinic. It was a win-win situation for everyone involved.
Patients who wouldn't have spoken for months, even after they entered the hospital, while they do work, they will say things like, I have a garden at home, and I like this fruit, or whatever. They have personally come across responses like that, and it definitely impacts. I think we find that it impacts everybody. It's not just about someone who's mentally ill. All of us need this kind of green therapy in every sense.
Niral has been planting greenery and city gardens since 2005, mostly on former wasteland, like the former landfill on the Adyar River in Chennai. In the year after being founded, volunteers started a reforestation program in the region. Today, this urban forest is one of the most beautiful green areas in the city. Since COVID-19, more and more volunteers are coming here.
Many years earlier, there used to be volunteers who felt they were doing something for the cause. But now I feel many of them come because they feel healed to be in this space. No, it's like gardens of healing, really.
Gardening work and the time spent outdoors have long been recognized as important parts of holistic therapy. The hope is that soon each patient will have his or her own little garden patch, and with that, the peace they need to recover.
Connecting with nature, it seems, is a default setting for humans. We return to it when the frills of modern life are removed. For the people of London, urban foraging has grown in popularity, thanks in part to COVID-19. People are spending more and more time outdoors and reconnecting with nature. Experienced foragers are touring the city, teaching newbies how to eat plants like stinging nettles without getting a rash.
Izzy Johnson is looking for something fresh and for free. And she finds what she's looking for all over London, in parks, by roadsides, and at bus stops.
This grows everywhere. It's a really nice edible. The reason it's called chickweed is because people used to feed it to their chickens, but it's well nice for humans as well. You put it in a salad. It's got a nice sort of very mild flavour, so it complements everything very well. And it's full of vitamin C as well. Yeah.
Izzy likes to pass on her expertise and leads foraging walks under the name Benevolent Weeds. The corona lockdown gave more Londoners the time and desire to explore the surroundings.
Look at that. That is dripping with berries. Oh, yeah.
Elderberries, ripe for the picking. So is anything that's not a protected species, even in most parks.
Smell those leaves. And tell me what you think they smell like. Some people say burnt popcorn. Some people say cat piss. They are best not eaten raw because they've got a tiny bit of toxin in them, which is neutralized as soon as you cook it. It's got amazing...
She says legend has it that a spirit lives in every elder tree, and you must be careful never to make it angry.
It's like very light brown.
So we quickly continue on our way. Around the corner, we make our next discovery, yarrow.
Okay. This feathery fella, one of my and Jay's all-time fail-safe go-to herbs. This is yarrow, Achillea millefolium.
Yarrow is especially versatile. Izzy says it tastes good on bread, but it's also a medicinal plant that's used to cleanse wounds.
Grab a little bit of yarrow, chew it up, put it on your wounds, and then you can use the long leaves of the plantain to wrap it around like a bandage.
Stinging nettle is a special treat for Izzy. She says it aids digestion and can be found growing most everywhere.
people are maybe sick of buying everything packaged in plastic, and also having to buy what is just there. We were born into this world and there it is, and just go and get it. So it's just good to learn about how to do that.
But most Londoners haven't got a clue that you can harvest enough for an entire meal in one of the city's parks.
That's the first thing that we heard. That's sick.
The other day I saw there was dill growing, and I use dill quite a lot, but I wouldn't go and pick it because I don't know what touched it, what causes it to grow.
I've been living here for like 3 years. I didn't know that about it. So.
Yeah, that's
it's a good thing to know. Like.
Izzy, however, is always hunting for edibles and often makes surprising discoveries.
Last weekend I found some bath truffles in the car park of a Tesco, and that was quite exciting.
Truffles?
Yeah, it was amazing. I was on my knees digging in the ground like a squirrel, which is what you got to do if you want to be a forager. You need to sort of think like an animal.
Maybe it's good that most Londoners don't know about the free food around them. That way, there's still some left for the city's real squirrels.
I may not be foraging yet, but I've started a balcony garden during the pandemic to grow microgreens. It's a very tiny step to counter the green leafy vegetables which are grown on the river banks along polluted rivers in India. A cleanup of our rivers is the need of the hour. We've been looking at the example of the Citarum River in Indonesia, the world's most polluted river, in our mini-series here on Eco India. In the third part, we look at how people can be encouraged to not pollute it with household waste again.
Indonesia's trash problem is dire, and its impact is felt worldwide. More than 80% of the country's trash is mismanaged, often landing in incinerators, overflowing landfills, or in canals and rivers. The island nation produces more than 3.2 million tons of waste each year, almost half of which ends up in the ocean. Illegal trash exports from Australia, North America, and Europe are making the situation worse. With virtually no formal trash disposal here, residents take care of it themselves. So-called waste pickers try to find reusable material in the mounds of trash. Despite their abysmal living conditions, they fill the gap government officials have left. They make recycling possible. And they're not alone. Since 2014, Bank Sampah Bersenar has been active in the city of Bandung. The recycling bank established collection spots for household waste. At specific times, a driver comes by, weighs the trash that's been gathered, generates a receipt on the spot, and transports the waste to a central location. For many residents of the metropolis, this not only presents a clean way for them to dispose of their trash, but also makes trash collection a structured and lucrative source of income. The Bank Sampah Bersenar operates under the principle that anyone can hand them their trash, and according to a special point system, they get cash for their work. They take more than 100 different types of trash, which are further processed in textile factories. John Samuel is one of the founders of the prize-winning organization. He's proud of the social impact his company has had.
This is waste that we collect from communities. When we campaigned about this waste bank, they formed groups and we asked them to collect this kind of trash. From plastic to paper, metal, and even glass, like this.
The PET bottles are pressed and used in local textile factories for manufacturing polyester. 10 kilograms of PET bottles take up more than 1.5 cubic meters in the sacks used for gathering trash. It would have otherwise ended up in the ocean.
Sometimes people do not have a way to get rid of their waste. So when they don't know what to do and there is a river nearby, then the river becomes the place they throw their waste into it.
The Bank Sampa Bersenar is a successful concept that's already being copied. It's now one of about a dozen recycling banks in Bandung. While these developments are not nearly enough, every gram counts in the ongoing fight against trash.
The pandemic has shown us that nature has a way of healing itself, however much we try to go against it. Not going out of the way to cause harm to nature and aiding it to heal itself is our primary role now. I hope we've given you enough to think about today. I'll see you again next week. Until then, goodbye.